Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're going to be looking at meditation. More specifically, we're going to be taking a look at what Bhagwan, who you might know as Osho, had to say about meditation,
Mhm.
what it is, and maybe even more importantly, what it isn't.
Yeah.
And we're going to be using an excerpt from one of his talks to kind of guide our exploration today.
Right.
Meditation is one of those things that gets talked about a lot.
Yeah, it really is.
And it's kind of a core concept in a lot of different religions and spiritual traditions.
Definitely.
But it can also be kind of a tricky thing to really wrap your head around, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that Bhagwan really challenges is this idea that meditation is just like concentration,
Right.
because those terms get used kind of interchangeably.
Yeah, for sure.
But he really makes a strong argument that they're totally different things.
So you're saying that, like, just focusing on, I don't know, like work or even having a good conversation, that's not the same as meditation. I think a lot of us maybe kind of lump those things together.
Yeah, I think it's easy to fall into that trap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because concentration is obviously super important, right?
absolutely.
Like for pretty much everything we do,
Right.
think about scientists doing research. Or like, if you really need to focus on an exam.
Yeah.
Concentration's all about like narrowing your mind
Mm-hmm.
onto one single point, like a laser beam.
Okay.
But Bhagwan is saying that's not meditation at all.
Okay, so if concentrating to study for an exam is like a laser beam, what would be the analogy for meditation?
Ooh,
Would it be like more like a floodlight, like shining everywhere at once?
I like that. Yeah, maybe instead of even a floodlight, it's more like taking a step back
Okay.
and just appreciating like a vast landscape.
Yeah.
So it's not about narrowing your awareness, it's about expanding it
Mm-hmm.
and just noticing everything. But without that, like intense focus on any one thing.
Okay, I'm starting to see the difference a little bit.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, it still feels kind of abstract.
Right.
Do you have any like real world examples of how these two things, concentration and meditation, how they actually play out differently?
Well, Bhagwan actually tells this really amazing story about the king of Anasi
Okay.
back in 1920.
Mm-hmm.
And the king needed an appendectomy.
Oh, wow.
But he had this religious vow
Okay.
where he couldn't be rendered unconscious.
Wow. So no anesthesia?
Yeah, he couldn't have any anesthesia at all.
Yeah, it must have been terrifying for the doctor.
I know, right?
So how did he manage to get through like a serious surgery without any pain relief?
So he spent a few minutes reading from his religious text,
Okay.
and then he just went completely still.
Wow.
And the doctors were able to perform the entire procedure.
Oh my God.
And it took over an hour.
No way.
And the king didn't even flinch.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's like a
Yeah.
crazy example of how powerful, like, the mind can be.
It really is. So in that case, Bhagwan would say the king was using like pure concentration, not meditation.
Exactly. It was this incredible mental discipline to,
Yeah.
like, block out all these other sensations, even really intense physical pain.
Yeah.
But it's still a mind-based activity, right? He's still focused on an object,
Right.
which in this case was the absence of pain.
Okay, so I'm starting to like see the distinction a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So concentration is about, like you said, focusing the mind like a laser on a specific object or goal,
Right.
while meditation is about expanding awareness to like encompass everything
That's it.
without that like really intense focus.
Yeah.
But then there's this other concept that Bhagwan talks about, and that's contemplation.
Right.
So how does that fit into the picture?
That's a great question. Contemplation's kind of like, it falls somewhere between concentration and meditation,
Okay.
So it's not laser focused like concentration,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also not pure awareness like meditation. Think about it this way. You might contemplate a complex idea like justice
Right.
or beauty,
Mm-hmm.
and you're kind of exploring all the different aspects and viewpoints.
I mean, he brings up that funny anecdote about Socrates,
Yes.
who was famous for getting so lost in thought he stood outside in the snow all night.
Yeah.
And nearly froze to death.
Yeah, he was so absorbed in his thoughts, like he completely lost awareness of his surroundings.
Right. Wow.
But even contemplation, even though it's really valuable for like deep thinking and philosophy,
Mm,
it's still ultimately about like focusing on something outside of yourself,
right.
on an object of thought.
So both concentration and contemplation,
Mm-hmm.
they both involve the mind engaging with something outside itself.
Yeah.
Whereas meditation is about turning inward.
Exactly. That's the core of it, you know?
Mm,
Meditation is about, like, becoming aware
yeah.
of the one who is concentrating,
Right.
the one who's contemplating, the subject itself. It's like shifting your focus from the object of your thoughts to the thinker having those thoughts.
That's a pretty mind-bending concept.
I know, right?
It's like trying to, I don't know, see your own eyes without using a mirror.
Hmm.
Is that even possible?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And it can be really challenging, you know?
Right.
We're just so used to focusing outwards
Yeah.
that turning inward can feel really disorienting, you know?
Yeah.
It's like trying to grasp something that's always been right there in front of you,
Right.
but
Yeah.
just out of reach.
Yeah, I get that.
But Bhagwan argues that this inward journey, this exploration of the self, this is actually the key to like unlocking a deeper understanding of who we are
Okay.
and how we relate to the world.
That's a really intriguing idea.
Yeah.
But how do we actually even like begin that inward journey? Like, how do we shift our focus from the external world to this kind of observer within?
Well, he talks a lot about the importance of cultivating awareness,
Mm-hmm.
of like noticing our thoughts, our feelings, and our sensations
Yeah.
without judgment.
So instead of trying to like stop our thoughts altogether, which
Yeah.
I've tried and like failed miserably at,
Yeah.
you're saying we should just observe them.
Yeah.
Like kind of like watching clouds drift by in the sky.
Exactly. Like imagine you're sitting on a park bench
Okay.
watching the clouds drift by.
Yeah.
You don't try to like control them or
Right.
judge them. You're just observing them.
Mm.
Meditation is about cultivating that same kind of like non-judgmental observation,
Okay.
but directed inwards.
Mm.
You become the witness to your own thoughts and emotions.
That sounds almost too simple.
Right.
But I have to ask, don't we need some degree of like concentration to even observe our thoughts? Like
Yeah.
if our mind is constantly jumping around,
Yeah.
how can we possibly even notice anything?
That's a great point. And that's actually where the distinction between concentration and awareness becomes really important. So it's not about like laser focus. It's about like a gentle, open attention.
Okay.
Think of it like holding a butterfly in your hand.
Okay.
If you hold it too tight, you're going to crush it. But if you hold it too loose, it's going to fly away.
Right.
So it's about finding that balance.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it's less about like forcing your mind to be still
Right.
and more about cultivating this kind of relaxed attentiveness.
Exactly.
It's almost like, you know, that mirror analogy you were using earlier. It's
Got it.
almost like we're training our minds to be more like that mirror, reflecting everything,
Mhm.
but without getting attached to any one reflection.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
This is all making a lot of sense. But like, I have to admit, it still feels kind of daunting, you know?
Right.
Because we live in this world that's constantly demanding our attention. So how can we possibly cultivate this kind of inner stillness
Mhm.
amidst all the chaos?
It's definitely a challenge. Our minds are so conditioned, you know,
Right.
to be constantly engaged,
Yeah.
to be thinking, planning, reacting.
Mm-hmm.
And Bhagwan actually talks about how this outward focus
Mm-hmm.
can actually be a hindrance on the path to true awareness.
Okay.
He even goes so far as to say that like certain religious practices can actually kind of inadvertently reinforce that outward focus,
Wow.
you know?
That's pretty provocative.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really kind of challenging some deeply ingrained beliefs about religion and spirituality.
He is.
Oh,
And I think
yeah.
that's part of what makes his perspective on meditation so compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not afraid to question the status quo
Right.
and encourage people to, like, think for themselves
Yeah.
and find their own unique path to truth.
This has already given me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? Like,
Right.
how do we begin to kind of put these ideas into practice?
Well, Bhagwan definitely had some very specific ideas about how to approach meditation
Okay.
and how to kind of overcome those obstacles that he saw in traditional religion.
Yeah.
And he also had, like, a pretty fascinating personal journey that
Mhm.
led him to these conclusions.
Right.
So I think exploring his journey might actually give us some really valuable insights into like how to apply these concepts to our own lives.
That sounds incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
I'm really eager to learn more about like Bhagwan's life and kind of how he came to develop such a unique perspective on meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can dive into that a bit later.
For sure. But first, I think it's important to kind of unpack Bhagwan's critique of organized religion a little bit further.
Right.
You know, because he had some pretty strong opinions about how certain religious practices can actually hinder our spiritual growth.
Right.
And I think understanding those critiques might help us to like see the true value of his approach to meditation.
Okay, that sounds like a great place to start.
Yeah.
So let's take a deeper look at, why Bhagwan was so critical of organized religion
Hmm.
and how he saw meditation as like this more direct path to personal transformation.
Right.
Let's do it.
Bhagwan didn't really hold back when it came to like talking about organized religion.
Right.
He actually saw it as like a system that kind of inadvertently reinforces that outward focus we were talking about.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You're saying that like certain religious practices can actually create obstacles to spiritual growth.
Yeah.
What did he see as like the main problem with that?
Well, he felt like a lot of religions emphasize like rituals,
Okay.
dogma, and like worshiping an external deity, And he argued that this keeps people like focused on something outside of themselves.
Right.
Rather than encouraging them to actually like look within.
So instead of connecting with some like external concept of God,
Yeah.
he felt like the real journey was about connecting with exactly.
With your own inner awareness.
Okay.
He believed that like the divine or whatever you want to call it, it's not out there somewhere.
Right.
It's actually found within each of us.
That's a pretty radical departure. Yeah. From how a lot of religions kind of frame spirituality.
Right.
I'm starting to understand why he was such a controversial figure.
Oh, yeah. He was definitely not afraid to like challenge the conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
He even said something pretty funny about the Pope, like declaring that direct contact with God was a sin.
Oh, wow.
Like you're supposed to go through the proper channels of the church, according to...
That does seem a bit like a power play, doesn't it?
It totally does.
Yeah.
I mean, who are they to tell us how we should connect with something so personal?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was like Bhagwan's point. He felt like this kind of religious authority can actually like block people
Right.
from having a genuine direct experience of the divine, however they conceive of it.
Okay.
And he really saw meditation as like the key
Okay.
to breaking free from those limitations.
Okay, I'm following you.
Okay.
So if organized religion, with its focus on, external rituals and dogma, can be an obstacle,
Right.
how does meditation help us kind of get around that?
Well, remember that story about the king of Anasi and the surgery?
Yes.
Okay, so he used that incredible concentration
Right.
to control his pain. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But what Bhagwan argued is that true awareness isn't about like blocking things out.
Okay.
It's about like observing them without judgment.
Okay.
You become the witness to the sensation.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be such a powerful tool for like managing not just physical pain,
Right.
but also like difficult emotions and challenges in our lives.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to like force our minds to be quiet or ignore what we're feeling,
Right.
we simply notice it. It sounds like incredibly difficult, but also like kind of freeing.
It is a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
But think about it this way. We spend so much energy fighting against our thoughts and emotions,
Right.
What if we could simply just like observe them without getting like swept away?
Yeah.
That's the power of meditation.
So meditation's like developing like a new skill.
Yeah,
A new way of kind of relating to our inner world.
absolutely.
But if it's not about concentration or like forcing our minds to be silent,
Right.
how do we actually like practice it?
Well, it's about like cultivating that gentle attentiveness that we were talking about earlier, Like you become the observer,
Okay.
noticing your breath, your thoughts, your feelings as they like arise and pass away.
Okay.
It's like watching leaves floating down a stream,
Yeah. Right.
You don't try to control them.
Right.
You simply observe them.
Okay. But isn't there like a risk of getting distracted? I mean, our minds are like notorious for wandering.
Yeah.
Right?
It's natural for your mind to wander. I mean, that's what minds do.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But the key is to just like notice when it's happened without judgment and just gently like guide your attention back.
To your breath or whatever you're focusing on.
Right.
It's like training a puppy.
Yeah.
You don't get like upset when it wanders off.
Right.
You just gently guide it back to your side.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So it's about cultivating kind of a gentle discipline, not like a harsh, forceful control.
Exactly. It's much more about like a subtle
Okay.
but profound shift in like how we relate to our inner world.
Ah.
And the more we practice,
Yeah.
the easier it becomes to access that state of awareness,
Mm-hmm.
even amidst like all the challenges of daily life.
This all sounds very promising.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, what are like the tangible benefits?
Right.
I mean, does cultivating this awareness actually make a difference
Mm-hmm.
in how we live our lives?
That's a great question. And, while Bhagwan didn't really focus much on like the practical benefits,
Right.
he did suggest that like as we become more aware,
Yeah.
we become less reactive,
Mhm.
less driven by these kind of unconscious patterns.
Okay.
And we start to make choices from a place of like greater clarity and freedom.
So it's not just about feeling calmer.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
about actually like changing the way
Yeah,
we interact with the world.
absolutely. Meditation is not about like escaping from the world.
Okay.
It's about like engaging with it in a more conscious
Hmm.
and compassionate way.
And that's a pretty powerful transformation, wouldn't you say?
I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And if I'm understanding this correctly, this is like the path that Bhagwan himself followed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really curious to hear more about his personal journey
Yeah.
and how it kind of led him to these insights
Right.
about meditation and spirituality.
That's where it gets really fascinating.
Yeah.
His journey was anything but conventional,
Okay.
full of like twists and turns and
Yeah.
challenges to traditional thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's a story that I think will resonate with anyone
Yeah.
who's ever like questioned the status quo
Right.
or sought to kind of find their own unique path.
Are you ready to dive into that?
I am, are you?
Absolutely. Tell me everything. Okay, so we've talked about how Bhagwan saw meditation as like this path to inner awareness, a way to, kind of break free from the limitations of organized religion
Right.
and connect with something deeper within ourselves.
Yeah.
But his own journey to that understanding,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't exactly like straightforward, was it?
No, not at all. He was a real rebel, even from a young age.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He was born into a Jain family in India,
Okay.
but he started like questioning their beliefs pretty early on.
Interesting.
He was always pushing boundaries, challenging authority
Mm-hmm.
and just like really seeking his own truth.
So he didn't just like follow the path that was laid out for him.
Nope.
He really like went his own way.
Totally. He devoured books on philosophy
Okay.
from like both Eastern and Western traditions,
Wow.
but he never just blindly accepted any one doctrine.
He was always like synthesizing, questioning,
Right.
and searching for a deeper understanding.
That sounds like a pretty intense process.
It was.
Did he have any like specific experiences that kind of led him to this this unique perspective on meditation?
Well, he talked about his enlightenment as kind of like a gradual unfolding,
Okay.
like a culmination of years of
Yeah.
intense self-inquiry and meditation.
Okay.
It wasn't like a sudden flash of insight,
Right.
like how some people describe it.
Right.
It was more of a slow and steady deepening of awareness.
So he didn't just have like one big aha moment.
Right.
It was more of like an ongoing process of discovery.
Exactly.
And he emphasized that this process of like awakening
Mhm.
is available to everyone, right?
Absolutely. He didn't think it was just for like monks or mystics living in caves or something.
Right. Right.
He really saw meditation as like a tool,
Okay.
a technique
Yeah.
that anyone can use
Mm.
to tap into that inner potential.
That's a really empowering message.
I think so too.
It makes kind of spirituality feel much more accessible and
Sure.
practical.
Yeah. I mean, that was his goal.
Okay.
He wanted to demystify meditation,
Mhm.
strip away all the dogma and ritual
Yeah.
and present it as like a science of the mind,
Right.
a way to like actually understand and transform our inner world.
And that's kind of what sets him apart from a lot of other spiritual teachers.
Totally.
Woo.
He wasn't interested in being like a guru or having followers.
Right.
He wanted to like empower people
Mm-hmm.
to find their own truth.
I think that's a really important takeaway from this whole conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Meditation isn't about like following someone else's rules
Mhm.
or trying to like fit into some specific mold.
Yeah,
It's about exploring your own inner landscape
absolutely.
and discovering like what resonates with you.
I love that.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
And I think that's the beauty of like Bhagwan's message,
Mm.
He encourages us to like question everything, challenge the status quo,
Yeah.
and find our own unique path to truth,
That's-
whatever that may look like for each of us.
I love that.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
It really adds.
I mean, we've covered so much ground, from the like subtle differences between concentration and meditation
Yeah.
to, the challenges of organized religion
Right.
to like the power of cultivating inner awareness.
Mm-hmm.
But as we kind of wrap up here,
Yeah.
is there like one key insight,
Okay.
one nugget of wisdom that you hope our listener will take away from
Yeah.
this exploration?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to remember is that meditation isn't about like achieving some perfect state of bliss
Okay.
or silencing the mind completely,
Mhm.
It's about learning to like observe our thoughts and emotions
Right.
without judgment,
Mm-hmm.
to become the witness to our own experience.
Right.
And I think that shift in perspective, that ability to like create space
Yeah.
between ourselves and our thoughts
Yeah.
can have such a profound impact on how we like navigate the world and live our lives.
It's about recognizing that we are not our thoughts.
Yes.
We're not our emotions.
Oh, yeah, that.
We are the awareness that experiences them.
Mm-hmm.
And that awareness is always there,
Yeah.
waiting to be discovered.
Beautiful.
So, to our listener, we leave you with this final thought. If meditation is about turning inward, what will you discover when you explore the depths of your own being? What treasures await you in the vast landscape of your own awareness?
Please like, share and subscribe.